Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin with a truth most people overlook. Power isn't loud. Power doesn't shout. Power doesn't need to be seen to control the room. Real power is quiet. It's strategic. It's deliberate. And most importantly, it doesn't fight. Today, I want to talk to you about a new way to win. Not by pushing harder, not by reacting faster, but by knowing exactly when silence becomes your greatest weapon. Fighting back is what they want you to do. When someone tries to provoke you emotionally, verbally, professionally, what they're really searching for is a reaction. Your reaction gives them control. Your emotion gives them access. Your anger gives them leverage. So the next time someone pushes, insults, challenges, or tries to drag you into their chaos, remember this: you can't manipulate someone who refuses to play. Silence is not weakness. It is a strategy. Control begins with your physiology. Before you control a situation, you must control yourself. Slow your breathing, relax your shoulders, keep your voice steady, maintain your posture, because people read you long before they hear you. Your body communicates dominance or submission without you even opening your mouth. When you remain calm, especially when someone expects you to explode, you communicate one thing: I am not threatened. And that is control. Observe more than you speak. Most people walk through life fixated on their own perspective. But the person who watches, the person who analyzes, the person who gathers information without revealing a thing, that person owns the room. When you stop fighting and start observing, you begin to notice who is insecure, who is bluffing, who is performing, who is hiding something. Information is leverage, and the one who collects the most wins. Your silence forces others to reveal themselves. When you stay quiet, people fill the gaps. They overshare. They expose their motives. They reveal their fears. They show you exactly how to control the situation. Because silence makes people uncomfortable. And in that discomfort, they hand you the truth. The less you speak, the more control you gain. Outsmarting doesn't require winning, it requires outlasting. Some battles aren't worth fighting. Some people aren't worth engaging. Some moments aren't worth reacting to. Power is choosing where your energy goes. Influence is choosing where your voice is heard. Control is choosing when you stay silent. When you rise above provocation, you don't just win, you remove yourself from the battlefield entirely. And nothing terrifies a challenger more than realizing you're playing a different game they can't compete in. The quietest person in the room is usually the most dangerous because they're thinking, they're assessing, they're calculating. That quiet confidence creates a psychological shift. People lean in, they watch you more carefully, they respond to you differently. They sense that you know something they don't, and that alone makes them cautious. Power is presence, not volume. Don't fight, lead. The strongest leaders don't fight every battle. They don't react to every challenge. They don't attend every argument they're invited to. They control their environment by controlling themselves. They command respect without demanding it. They influence without aggression. They shift dynamics with a look, a pause, a breath. That is what I want for you. When someone tries to provoke you, when they push for a reaction, when they try to pull you into chaos, you don't fight back. You don't lose control. You don't give them the reaction they crave. You breathe. You observe, you think, you wait, and then without saying a word, you win. Thank you. Silence is a strategic power. Control the room without giving away your emotions. Most people underestimate the force behind quiet composure because they equate volume with influence and reaction with strength. But real mastery begins with understanding that silence is not the absence of power, it is the concentration of it. When you choose silence deliberately, you create a psychological shift in everyone around you. People begin to watch you more closely, interpret your body language more carefully, and assign meaning to every controlled gesture you make. In that moment, you become unpredictable, unreadable, and therefore unmanipulable. Silence gives you the space to evaluate the situation while preventing others from evaluating you. It acts as a shield, a filter, and a weapon all at once. When you stay quiet, you're not retreating, you're gathering intelligence. You're watching how people move, how they change their tone, where their eyes shift, how they respond to stress, and what their baseline behavior looks like. Most individuals reveal far more than they intend, simply because they feel the need to fill silence. They talk to ease their discomfort. They share opinions, stories, excuses, and details that no one asked for. They try to break the tension because they don't know how to operate in a space where the other person refuses to give them emotional cues. Your silence becomes a pressure chamber, and the longer you hold it, the more others expose themselves. This gives you the advantage of timing. When you don't react instantly, you create a gap between stimulus and response, a gap most people operate without. In that space, you can read intent, detect emotional manipulation, analyze motives, and choose your next move with precision rather than impulse. Silence gives you control over the pace of the interaction. Instead of matching the urgency someone tries to impose on you, you step outside of it entirely. You slow everything down. You make others wait for your reaction instead of rushing into theirs. People become cautious when they don't know what you're thinking, and caution makes them more predictable. Silence also protects your emotional state. When you speak too quickly or with heightened emotion, you give others the blueprint to influence you. They learn what irritates you, what pressures you, what scares you, and what destabilizes you. They learn where your emotional triggers are and how to use them. Once someone knows your weak spots, you no longer control the dynamic they do, but silence denies them access. You stop broadcasting your vulnerabilities. You stop validating their attempts to provoke you. You stop feeding the moment with reactions that can be analyzed and used against you. Your calm presence sends a message that cannot be ignored. Your emotions are not accessible, your mind is not penetrable, and your boundaries are not negotiable. There is also immense power in the psychological discomfort silence creates. Humans are wired to resolve uncertainty. When you say nothing, the other person begins to project meaning onto your silence. They start wondering what you're thinking, how you're evaluating them, whether they've made a mistake, or how they should adjust their behavior to get a response from you. Without speaking, you take control of the mental space in the room. People become more careful with their words. They soften their tone. They tread more lightly because they're trying to avoid miscalculating your reaction. That shift, subtle as it is, puts you in a superior position. You're not chasing control. Control comes to you. Silence also makes your eventual words more impactful. When you withhold your voice for most of an exchange, the moment you do speak becomes amplified. People lean in. They listen more intently. They assign more significance to your statements because you haven't been flooding the space with unnecessary commentary. Silence creates scarcity, and scarcity creates value. You establish yourself as someone who speaks with purpose, not impulse. People learn that when you talk, it matters. You're not competing for attention, you command it effortlessly. In high-stakes situations, silence can dismantle aggression. Most aggression is fueled by the expectation of a reaction. When someone tries to provoke you through intimidation, confrontation, or emotional manipulation, they expect resistance. They expect you to mirror their energy. They expect you to fight back, raise your voice, defend yourself, or at least justify your position. When you refuse to participate in the escalation, the aggression loses momentum. You're not feeding the fire. You're not giving it oxygen. You're letting it burn out on its own while you remain unshaken. This ability to stay grounded when someone else is spiraling shifts the entire power balance. They realize they can't pull you into their emotional storm, and that realization alone destabilizes their strategy. Silence is also a form of dominance in negotiation and confrontation. When you pause before answering, people reveal their fears and assumptions. They confess what worries them, what they expect, and what they want. In that pause, they try to fill the space to regain a sense of control, but in doing so, they give you insights you never had to ask for. Silence becomes a probe, drawing out information you can use while keeping your own position concealed. You stay unreadable, strategic, controlled. The other person becomes the one who shifts, adjusts, compensates, and reveals. Your silence is not passive, it is deliberate situational authority. It shows that you're not ruled by emotion, you're not seeking validation, and you're not threatened by pressure. It communicates confidence without effort and strength without aggression. It signals that you understand your value and you do not need to prove it. You create a presence that others respond to instinctively because they recognize something rare, someone who operates from clarity, not chaos, someone who leads without speaking, someone who controls without force. Observation beats reaction, collect information while others expose themselves. Most people move through the world convinced that the loudest voice, the fastest response, or the quickest comeback is what gives them control. But true control never comes from reacting. Reaction is impulsive. It's emotional, It's the moment you surrender your strategy to someone else's tempo. Observation, on the other hand, is deliberate intelligence. It is the discipline of watching, absorbing, and evaluating without revealing your internal state. When you observe instead of react, you learn far more about a person than they ever intended to show. You see the inconsistencies in their behavior, the shifts in their tone, the signals they don't realize they're broadcasting, and the motives hiding behind their words. You step out of the emotional current and into a position where you can examine the entire landscape with clarity. The reason observation is so powerful is because people are far more honest with their behavior than with their speech. Words can be crafted, words can be manipulated, words can be rehearsed, shielded, polished, and edited, but the body always betrays the truth. People reveal themselves through what they do in the seconds between their words. They reveal themselves in the way they respond to silence, the way their eyes track the room, the way they shift their weight, and the way they hold tension in their hands. The person who prepares a story may fool you with what they say, but they can't hide the flicker of discomfort when they're asked a question they didn't anticipate. They can't hide the micro-expression of irritation when something challenges their ego. They can't hide the split-second panic in their eyes when their narrative slips. When you stay observant instead of reactive, you catch these moments easily. Observation allows you to see the patterns each person follows. Everyone has a baseline, their normal behavior when they are comfortable and unthreatened. Once you identify someone's baseline, any deviation from it becomes an immediate alert. A sudden change in posture, tone, pacing, or eye movement tells you more about what they're thinking than their words ever could. It becomes a roadmap to their intentions. When you react emotionally, you miss these details completely, but when you watch first and act second, you gain information they didn't intend to reveal. Choosing to observe gives you the ability to stay one step ahead of any situation. People who rely on reaction operate at the mercy of their environment. They respond to whatever's thrown at them. They get pulled into arguments. They get manipulated by guilt. They mirror aggression with aggression and lose their strategic edge in the process. But the observer never enters the game on someone else's terms. They watch the pieces move, the alliances form, the motivations emerge. They wait for the moment when clarity reveals the leverage point. This is how you take control, without ever appearing confrontational. You understand the situation better than everyone else because you were the only one paying attention. Observation also reveals power dynamics. You see who influences whom. You see who controls the conversation, who seeks validation, who dominates through insecurity, and who steps back when pressure rises. You see who talks too much when nervous, who avoids eye contact when lying, who interrupts to assert superiority, and who stays quiet to calculate. In every room, a hierarchy forms, even if no one speaks it aloud. When you focus on observing instead of reacting, you recognize that hierarchy instantly. And once you know who truly holds influence, you know where to direct your energy and where to withdraw it. Another advantage of observation is the gift of emotional distance. When you watch instead of react, you remove yourself from the emotional heat of the moment. You're not absorbing someone else's anger, insecurity, or manipulation. You're examining it like data. Emotion clouds judgment. Observation sharpens it. When someone tries to provoke you, your lack of reaction tells you everything you need to know. They needed your emotional response to feel in control. When you don't give it to them, their tactic collapses. They expose their intentions because they lose the leverage they were counting on. You see their frustration, their instability, and their anxiety rising, and with each new detail, you gain more insight into their weakness. People unintentionally reveal their deepest insecurities when they think you're not paying attention, and they reveal their most calculated intentions when they think you are. Observation positions you in the middle of that contrast, where both truths become obvious. Some people communicate their ego through dominance, some through defensiveness, some through avoidance, some through charm, some through aggression disguised as confidence. When you watch patterns instead of listening to words, you identify the insecurity driving their actions. Once you understand a person's insecurity, you understand the key to predicting their behavior. When you prioritize observation, you also learn when to speak for maximum impact. You don't talk to fill silence or defend yourself from assumed attacks. You speak when you've gathered enough information to make your words precise and targeted. People who speak reactively scatter their words in every direction. People who observe speak with intention, and intention shifts power immediately. A well-timed, well-measured sentence can disarm someone far more effectively than emotional rebuttals ever could. It works because it's based on what you've studied, not what you've assumed. Observation also gives you the advantage of patience. You don't rush, you don't chase, you don't scramble to prove yourself. You wait for the right moment. You let others expose their motives, their pressure points, and their mistakes. You allow situations to unfold without forcing them. Control doesn't come from speed, it comes from understanding. And understanding comes from watching everything long enough to see the truth beneath the surface. When you stop reacting and start observing, you gain access to the type of information that other people overlook completely. You see the hidden intentions in a conversation, the emotional security of each person in the room, the dynamics between personalities, and the silent signals people transmit without realizing it. You begin operating from a place of insight instead of instinct. You stop playing defense and start playing strategy. You learn to move with precision instead of emotion, clarity instead of assumption, intelligence instead of impulse. Self-control is dominance. When you stay calm, you dictate the outcome. Most people misunderstand dominance. They think it's about overpowering, outshouting, or intimidating others into submission. But true dominance has nothing to do with force, has everything to do with command of yourself. When you maintain control over your emotions, your tone, your expression, and your reactions, you gain an authority that no external force can challenge. People instinctively follow those who appear unfazed by pressure. They trust those who stay grounded when others panic. They respect those who don't allow their inner world to be dictated by the external one. Self-control is the kind of strength that cannot be taken from you because it doesn't rely on anyone else's behavior. It comes from within. When you remain calm, you shift the entire energy of the interaction. Human communication is contagious. People mirror what they feel around them. If you escalate, they escalate. If you panic, they panic. If you get defensive, they push harder. But if you stay steady and composed, you disrupt the emotional momentum of the moment. You remove the fuel from conflict. You break the pattern the other person is trying to create. Your calm forces others to recalibrate their tone and reevaluate their approach. This isn't because you said anything powerful, it's because your presence becomes the stabilizing force that they subconsciously adjust to. That is dominance without aggression. Self-control also prevents you from being emotionally hijacked. Losing your temper is losing your power. Showing frustration is revealing your weakness. Allowing someone to provoke you means they now control the interaction. They know what buttons to push. They know which reactions they can manipulate. But when you remain calm, they lose access to the very tools they were hoping to use against you. Emotional provocation fails when it meets a wall of unshakable composure. People can only manipulate what they can influence, and when you make your emotional state untouchable, their influence collapses. This forces them to approach you differently, more carefully, more thoughtfully, more respectfully. Self-control is also a form of psychological protection. When you don't allow emotions to spill into your decision-making, you see situations with clarity. You think in terms of strategy, not reaction. You choose your words deliberately. You assess every angle before responding. This is the mindset that prevents regrets, prevents mistakes, and prevents others from gaining the upper hand in moments of tension. Calm thinking protects you from being rushed into choices you didn't want to make. It protects you from manipulation disguised as urgency. It protects you from the traps people set when they hope you'll react impulsively. Calm is armor. Maintaining self-control also strengthens your influence. People follow leaders who can regulate themselves. They gravitate toward individuals who don't get rattled under pressure. Calmness signals capability. It signals confidence. It signals authority. When you stay level-headed even when challenged, you demonstrate that you're someone who cannot be destabilized. This earns you a different kind of respect. Not the kind given out of fear, but the kind given out of recognition. People trust those who think clearly. They trust those who don't crumble under stress. They trust those who remain objective instead of emotional. Influence expands naturally around individuals who operate with consistent composure. Self-control also allows you to choose the timing of your actions with precision. When you're calm, you don't rush to defend yourself, don't jump into arguments, and don't respond just to prove a point. You act when it benefits you, not when emotion demands it. Timing is one of the most underestimated components of power. Acting too soon gives away information. Acting too late surrenders opportunity. But acting from a place of calm awareness allows you to move exactly when the moment is right. You make decisions from a position of strength, not desperation. You choose responses that advance your objective rather than satisfy your ego. This is what separates strategy from impulse. Self-control also changes the way your words land. When your emotions are steady, your voice carries more weight. You speak with clarity, not clouded by frustration or tension. People listen more closely because your composure signals intention. You're not talking just to talk or arguing just to argue. You're speaking with purpose. And when people sense purpose, they respond differently. They pause, they consider, they measure their own words more carefully. You shape the tone of the entire conversation because you set the standard for it. Another powerful aspect of calmness is its ability to reveal others. When you stay in control, you get to watch what the other person does when they can't get the reaction they want. Their behavior becomes information. Do they escalate? Do they crumble? Do they try a different tactic? Do they expose their insecurity? Do they reveal their true intentions? Your calm creates contrasts, making their emotional patterns more visible. When you don't react, the spotlight shifts to them. Their impatience, their aggression, their fear, their insecurity, all of it becomes obvious. Meanwhile, you stay grounded and observant, gathering everything you need to navigate the situation with advantage. Self-control is also a test that most people fail. Pressure exposes character. Conflict reveals discipline. Stress reveals the gap between who people think they are and who they truly are. The person who can maintain composure when everything around them becomes unstable is the person who holds real power. This is why self-control commands respect. It is rare. Most people are ruled by emotion. Most people respond impulsively. Most people give away their power without realizing it. But the person who can regulate themselves, no matter the circumstance, stands out immediately. Calmness is not neutrality. It's not passiveness. It's not weakness. Calmness is controlled power. It is direction without chaos. It is presence without noise. It is strength without theatrics. When you stay composed, you create stability in situations where others lose balance. You remain the anchor while others drift. And in that balance, that discipline, that unwavering control, you establish dominance not through force, but through the unmistakable authority of a person who owns themselves completely.